welcome to the Carolina Weather Group. We continue looking back at some of the previous severe weather events that's not only affected the Carolinas but the Southeast. And this is the 10-year anniversary of the April 27, 2011 tornado outbreak, not only for the Southeast, including Mississippi and Alabama, but there's also some tornadoes in Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina. So we want to focus our attention right now on the Alabama aspect of that. And we have with us Chief Meteorologist from ABC 3340, James Spann. James, appreciate you spending some time with us as we kind of look back at this. I think you categorize it as a generational tornado outbreak for the state of Alabama. A very well forecasted event leading into it. Take us behind the scenes as you there at the station are getting not only the viewers ready, but the reporters ready, the storm spotters ready. Take us back to what it was like a couple of days leading into the event.
Well, it was a well forecast event. And, you know, one thing about it, I didn't know it was going to be that bad. I didn't know. I mean, could it be? Yes. But odds of an event like that are always not that high. So I didn't know we were going to have 62 tornadoes that day. I didn't know that the death toll would be so high. But having said that, it was a Wednesday event, and you could start to see it, you know, about 5 days out. The Friday before the Wednesday, we started to mention it. And then after the weekend, we really hit it hard, Monday and Tuesday, with everything we had. And I think people were prepped, and I think people knew that it was coming. But despite that, you know, the only number that matters to me, and I'm a numbers guy, is 252. That's the number of people that died that day. We had 251 names, and we had one infant that was delivered prematurely at 6 months. The infant did not have a name, and the infant didn't live. So 252. And that's just a reminder, guys, we got some work to do. I think what we learned that day is that, you know, what we do is not enough. We need some help. And we've been trying to get help for the last 10 years to make the process better.
It was an interesting time, too, I believe, because that's when social media started coming into effect. And looking back through some of the coverage, you had the storm chasers out in the field. You were getting some reports via social media.
I guess Twitter was about maybe, 5 years old, and Facebook had been around for a while. And it was still kind of primitive. The penetration of the public is not as high as it is now, but it was still very helpful. I think the most amazing thing to me looking back on that day was how we were able to get video back from the middle of nowhere. I mean, we had some pretty remarkable video of these big wedge tornadoes. I mean, literally in the middle of nowhere. And cell service in 2011 is not as good as it is now in terms of coverage. But with social media, yeah, I pushed out stuff on Twitter and Facebook when I was on the wall over there. But it's still, like, even today, the most important thing I do is television. But it was great getting reports and pictures and video, not as much as we get today, but that always helps. I mean, it's just crucial. I mean, you can't beat showing a live video of a tornado. In fact, that's one thing we learned from social science, is that, you know, when you show radar on television, and we were standing out there April 27, 2011, I don't know, in the morning we were there for 5 or 6 hours. And in the second round, we were up there for 8, 9 hours. You show radar, it doesn't mean much to people. I mean, all you weather dweebs on here, you know, you show a hook echo and a debris ball, the eyes roll in the back of your head and your underwear starts flapping up and down your legs. Everybody knows, man, this is awesome. But to most people in the street, they don't know what that is. And even if you communicate that clearly, they still might not believe you. But by golly, if you show them a live video stream of this big tornado, they're going to dig a hole and they're going to get into a safe place. So we have to do a better job of getting cameras on these tornadoes. And it's problematic for us. You guys know this where you are. I mean, most of our tornadoes are rain wrapped. Most of them happen at night. We have hills, we have trees, but we do the best we can. But I thought on that day, it was pretty amazing how many tornadoes we did get on camera.
You had multiple tornadoes at one time. How was that? I know you and I had some meteorologists out in the field, another meteorologist in the studio helping you. What was it like covering multiple tornadoes, strong tornadoes at the same time?
There's no book or manual on how to do that. You don't learn that in college. You kind of learn it on the fly on that day, which is what we had to do. And That's one of the things I look back on. And then everybody's probably seen, weather people that listen to this show here, they've probably seen some of that. History is going to judge us for what we did that day. And I tell Jason Simpson, Jason was the meteorologist with me in the studio. We bonded that day. If you go through a generational tornado event with another meteorologist in the same room, you will be bonded for life. And I've known Jason since he was a kid. He interned with me. He's a really close friend. He's chief meteorologist at the station in Huntsville now. But, history is going to judge us, the two of us, for what we did that day. And I don't even know if what we did was right or wrong. Obviously, we did something wrong because 252 people died. That's inexcusable for anybody in the weather enterprise, inexcusable for the public. These were precious people that died. And I look back on it, I wonder, like the Tuscaloosa tornado. Everybody talks about the Tuscaloosa tornado. Well, what about the Cordova tornado? Tuscaloosa is a population center here. There's a big college there, University of Alabama, and everybody knows about that, and everybody knows what happened. It was a horrible tragedy. I'm not trying to lessen the magnitude of that, but what about the same EF4 that was down at the same time in Cordova in Walker County, where 2,000 people live at that many? Nobody talks about that. And did we focus too much on the Tuscaloosa tornado because we had that thing on camera and not focus enough on the Cordova tornado? I think about that a lot. And even in that case, we had two others down at the same time. And you just try and bounce back and forth between these things as best you can. And I try and give equal time. And I firmly believe that television meteorologists discriminate against people that live in rural areas. And that really makes me mad because I am from the guys. I'm from rural South Alabama. I'm from Greenville, Alabama. You guys ever seen Forrest Gump? Where's Forrest Gump from? Greenbow, Alabama. The guy that wrote that book, I know him. He passed away recently, Winston Groom. He patterned Greenbow after Greenville, this little town where I came from. And, if it's in a big market of, part of the city, the metro, we'll be on television live, local, late breaking, saving lives, the Weather Authority. But the minute it goes out into a rural area where maybe there's 1 meter in the whole county in the television ratings world, you go back to Freak of the Week or whatever it is on television, which is absolute insanity. What you're saying, people that live out in the country, their lives don't matter. And I'm not going to play that game. And the day they ever tell me to stop, I'll just go somewhere else where I can do that. But they've always supported me here. But I wonder if I didn't serve the people in rural areas enough with that. And I regret that. I can't go back and change it. I can't go back and fix it. But it was horrible dealing with multiple strong, violent tornadoes down at the same stinking time. The easiest tornado of the day was the Cullman tornado. That was the first one of the afternoon. It was an EF4. We had no other tornado at the time. We had it on camera. I didn't have to bounce back and forth between multiple storms, and we stayed with it. And it worked. Nobody died in that tornado. 20,000 people live in Cullman. So, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think I did it right, but I did the best I could do under the circumstances.
I was actually in Cullman filming the Cullman tornado when that occurred. And I was live streaming it as well at that time to Chaser TV, which was the big Storm Chaser streaming platform back in the day. One of the things that was crazy is the communications actually kind of went down, cell communications and pretty much everything else. And people were kind of distraught and didn't know where to turn to get their information from. That was one of the biggest things that stuck out to me that day was how communications failed at the very end of everything and kind of in the middle of the outbreak. So can you talk to us a little bit about in a position of trying to communicate to the public how that was affected?
I think one thing people forgot about too that day, we had a morning round of storms. It was basically a QLCS, and some pinhead named a squall line a QLCS a long time. I call them a squall line, quasi-linear convective system, whatever. It was linear. And we had a few embedded tornadoes and there was widespread wind damage. And that morning we had 250,000 people with no power before the big event started. And 5 people died in the morning storms. That in itself was a tragedy. And so we had a problem going into the afternoon with so many people without power. You had a lot of cell sites down. You had a lot of infrastructure damage. And our TV station, we had a lot of damage. We had cameras down. We had microwave paths that were down. We were crippled. I mean, all these engineers, we had a little break between the morning round and the afternoon round. And we got off the air for a little bit after the morning round. All these engineers, they came in there telling me everything that wasn't working. This doesn't work, and this is down. This is not working right now. And I finally said, guys, stop. I need to know what is working because we've got to get through the afternoon and prioritize how we're going to repair what we can in the next 2 hours. And they did a great job of getting things back, including that Cullman camera. That's one of the ones that went down. But yeah, there was clearly infrastructure problems with communication that afternoon. I think the one thing we learned is that some people have forgotten that good old radio and television is free. It is over the air. It has nothing to do with a cell network, and it's pretty darn reliable. And we often just blow past that these days. I'm going to watch it on my phone on YouTube TV, or I'm going to watch it on, whatever on a streaming platform. But what happens when all the cell sites go down? We're still on the air. These big 5 million watt blowtorch transmitters we have, not that many people watch them over the air now, but I think we have to remind people that with a, crappy $5 antenna from Walmart, you can pick up 60 channels, and you need to have that in your toolkit at your home in terms of severe weather. So I think that's the one thing we need to do. And goodness, local radio, people have forgotten about it. Everybody streams, their music on their phone, but they forget that we've got these local radio stations that are 100,000 watt blowtorch FMs and AMs, and they will simulcast our coverage. And they provided a lifeline that day. And I got to give a shout out to all those radio stations that just simulcast our coverage. If you listen to all those videos, those YouTube videos about like Tuscaloosa and these places, you could hear my voice. That was over the radio. So I think that's a thing we need to remind people of today, is that TV is still free. It is still over the air, and you don't need a cell network to watch it.
James, the thing I wanted to ask you is what has changed over the years since April 27th of 2011, and how do you do things differently today when you're on and involved in a situation like what happened back on March 17th of this year compared to the way you handled April of 2011?
Well, here's the deal. After the event, I didn't talk about it for 6 months. I had nothing to say. And people that know me, that's an anomaly. I mean, I'm a bag of hot air, and I've always got something to say. In fact, the National Weather Association annual meeting was here in Birmingham that year. Usually, James, they get me up there just to wave my hands, and I talk loud and I say something, that's outrageous. And I didn't speak. I had nothing to say, nothing. And everybody just couldn't believe it. But I needed to go through the phases of grief. These people died on my watch, and I'm in the process of trying to memorize every name. I'm not there yet. I was hoping to be there in 10 years. 251 names, their stories. Let me tell you, so you want to get motivated? You do that when there's a tornado in your market. Learn their names, talk with their families, get to know them. It will be so motivating for you in future events. But what after 6 months, I said, all right, let's roll up our sleeves and let's fix it. Something went wrong. There were 62 tornadoes in one day in the state, and there was a darn good warning for every one of them. In some cases, the lead time was 40 minutes. And I thought the death toll that day should have been 30. And 222 people ought to be listening to this show right now. And so I went to some of my friends in the social science world and said, help. And the first one that really reached out to me was Dr. Cloco McLean, Kim, and so many others I've befriended. And I'm not going to start mentioning names because I'll leave somebody out, but they have been such a great help. But this is the bottom line. What we do is not enough. My background is physical science. My first major in college was electrical engineering, and I changed majors and finished in meteorology. I don't know anything about being some TV guy or radio guy, or I don't know anything about it, really. I've just tried to watch people that I think are good and learn from them. I don't know anything about human behavior. And here we are trying to get people to do something, to take action. So they have so helped us. But here are the quickies on what we've learned, how things have changed. There's no doubt in my mind the number one reason people died that day, the siren mentality. I don't know what it is about Americans, especially in tornado-prone areas, and these stinking sirens. It's like there's a love affair. They think they're sexy or something. Now, I'll admit, they sound cool. I mean, you get a video, some guy with a tornado down and that thing's wailing in the background, but you can't hear that thing in your house during a raging severe storm at 3 a.m. And we've got to be better at teaching people this ain't it. I mean, they serve a purpose. They reach a few people outdoors, but that's it. And weather radio penetration is embarrassingly low in tornado-prone areas, Oklahoma, Alabama. And we've got to do a better job of getting a weather radio in every house. And again, that doesn't work on cell technology. You guys know that, these big RF transmitters the Weather Service has, and, teach people about, your phone's not enough. You got to have two ways. because your phone's going to quit working and WEA might not work and your app might not work and the weather radio. But if you do all this stuff together, you'll get the warning. But that's the main thing, the siren mentality. And the number 2 reason people died, the lack of helmet use. It's not that hard, guys. It's not. Most people that die in tornadoes, and let me just say this, I dabble in healthcare. I call it my hobby. For 15 years, I have been the chairman of the board of a really large tertiary care hospital here. I've just been interested in it. And I fell in love with these people 15 years ago. And I've learned a lot by talking to ER docs. And they will tell you that most people that die in tornadoes, what do they die from? Blunt force trauma. From where? The skull and the neck region. And all you need is a $5 bicycle helmet from Walmart. And probably over 50 people would be alive today. So it's messaging. It's messaging before the event. We've got an event Thursday. So I just messaged on television. What's the message? Have 2 ways of getting the warning, and it's not a siren. And you're going to have a helmet in your safe place for everybody. And that's not just for kids. And a lot of people go, well, it's nice for a kid. No. It's for everybody. I mean, you put a helmet on me, it's not a good look. It's like, lipstick on a hog, but it's going to keep me alive. Every life is precious. And so we've learned to message, helmets. That's really, really, really important. And, I could keep going, but one thing that we knew that we've screwed up on with the false alarm ratio was too high. It was over 80 in 2011. That's insane. Over 80% of tornado warnings were false alarms. We heard this in research all the time. I hear tornado warnings all the time and nothing ever happens. So the Weather Service in Birmingham went through a really comprehensive program going back to basic science. Kevin Laws is one of my heroes, the Sioux down here. They were issuing tornado warnings for, high-based storms, high LCLs. Never produced a tornado here, never. And they went back to the basic science and cut out all these bogus warnings, and the FAR is down in the 30s now. And all these things have added up to where it's a lot better now. We had and I'll stop answering your question. I could talk all day on this, but we had an event last Wednesday, St. Patrick's Day. We had 25 tornadoes in one day in the state, 25 last Wednesday. Not one person was killed and not one single person was hurt. Let me tell you what. 10 years ago, it wouldn't be that way. So we've learned a lot, and I think the lessons learned have paid off.
James, you hit on a couple things I want to get your expertise on. Social science, overwarning. National Weather Service right now is undertaking their initiative to simplify some of their communications, but also kind of introduce tiers for what goes to WEA and how the public then gets triggered. In your experience, is that going to be enough, you think, to help reach people and get them to understand? Or beyond what's already scoped, do we have more work that still needs to be done?
Look, it's not that hard. Here's the problem. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else. I'm guilty as sin here at this. But we go to these conferences and we listen to these research papers and we talk with the social scientists and we gather up in these conference rooms and we do what we think it's best for us. Who cares about us? That's not who we're serving. We're serving real people out here in the real world. You know what we need to do more often is go hang out I bet you guys have never been in a Dollar General. I bet you guys have never been in a Dollar General. That's where real people are. You want to know what real life is like? Go to a Dollar General. They're sweet people. They will talk to you. They will tell you things. You don't need a $100,000 grant to get this information, and you listen to them. And they'll tell you, is the false alarm ratio too high? What do you need on your phone for wireless emergency alerts? Do you need to have severe thunderstorm warnings on there? Do you need to have only tornado emergencies? So I think that's part of our problem is that we've disconnected from the people that we serve. And all of this stuff, and I'm a big fan of HAZSIMP. We got to simplify this. I'll be honest with you guys. There's some messages the Weather Service sends. I don't even know what it means. I mean, what is an aerial flood warning and a flash flood warning and a flood warning? I mean, it's bewildering to people, all this stuff. So a lot of this stuff has got to be simplified. And they're on the road to doing that. But as we look at the transformation, in the warning process, in the next 10 years, we have to be careful to be sure we're not doing it for us. We're doing it for the people.
Hey, James, this is Jordan McLeod.
I sound cranky, don't I? I'm sorry. I sound too cranky tonight.
Hey, now this is an engaging conversation here. Given how generational the April 27th outbreak was, it seems like we're hearing a lot of the use of the term bust today when it comes to outbreaks that don't quite measure up to April 27th. Now, I know this is a pet peeve Twitter post on this just the other day, because some people were calling last week's outbreak in Alabama a bust, even though there was, no loss of life and, tremendous success for the Weather Service. So can you talk a little bit about why that's become such a trend nowadays?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the weather enthusiasts and these Facebook pages. And listen, I don't want to throw water on these guys. Most of them are high school kids, and they love weather and they want to learn weather, and they don't mean any harm. But they'll get on Facebook and they'll say, look at the STP. Look at these updraft helicity tracks. This is going to be worse than April 27th, 2011. This is going to be a killer mega storm of the century. And people don't know it's a 15-year-old kid. And they're going to share it and share it and share it and share it and share it. And it just gets out of hand. And, I think that's part of the problem. And I don't even like that question when people ask me that. For example, we have a very high-end severe weather episode likely here Thursday. It's pretty common for episodes like this in March and April. This is the core of the spring segment of the tornado season. And the question is, will this be like April 27, 2011? I don't even like to answer that. That's a bad question. And of course, the answer is no. Let's do a study of climatology. I love numbers. I love looking at history. I really do think if you study history and climatology, it's a valid way of looking at what might happen in the future. And where we are down here, our generational events prior to 2011, what's the one before that? You guys were not even alive when the other one happened. April 3rd and 4th, 1974. Okay, I was a senior in high school. That changed my life. That's a topic for another show. But prior to that, it was March 21st, 1932. Prior to that, it was February, 19th of 1884, the Enigma outbreak. So they happen every 40 years. And that's a generational, really a definition of generational type storm to me. So the next time we have a day like April 27, 2011, I will be at the cemetery. But, so what? I mean, we had 25 tornadoes the other day. That's a big deal. And we didn't have all these, strong, violent tornadoes. It didn't produce that. And in a way, maybe you can, that's part of the criteria that I think was not met. But other than that, that was a big deal that day. And, we got to quit getting hung up in these comparisons and all this hype and everything. I mean, and here's the other thing, too. If we hype everything that comes along, nobody's going to listen to us. Nobody. I mean, goodness. And what we don't even recognize is the fact that there are a lot of people that are scared to death of this thing. There are people right now that are scared to death of what's going to happen Thursday because of something that's happened in their life. They've had a close encounter with a tornado, hurricane, severe thunderstorm, flood. Something's happened and it triggers this PTSD or some reaction, and they have a real phobia. And goodness, if I go on and say, the odds, somebody chewed me out last week because I said the odds of your house being hit on one of the biggest severe weather days in history, like April 27, 2011, are tiny, tiny. Most everybody in Alabama was not affected April 27, 2011. And some guy just reamed me out. He said, most of the state was affected. No, you're lying. So we've got to do something to calm these folks down and give them some comfort level and quit hyping everything up and do it in a calm way. And we'll get through it together. We'll be okay. So I don't like these comps every time we have a moderate risk or a high risk, and immediately it's going to be another April 27th. Every event is different. And again, the next time we have a day like that, be 2038, 2048, 2050, you guys will still be doing this show here, but I won't be around.
Hey, James, quick question here. You bring up the risk. Have we overcomplicated that, the SPC?
Well, come on. You guys, I'm sure you guys have talked about it like we have. The category names just are horrible. Yeah, we know trust me. I'll go down to the Target down here in Alabaster and say, what's the highest level risk? Is it moderate or enhanced? Everybody says enhanced. Everybody says enhanced is a higher level risk than a moderate, where in reality it's flipped. And, it's just not working. I mean, it works for people in the weather business. And when you talk with people in the Weather Service, they say, well, all the emergency managers have been used to those names and those criteria, and they're used to it. Well, so what? Are we here just to serve emergency managers or people that work for the Weather Service or broadcast meteorologists? We don't know. And so I really think we have to revisit that. And some TV meteorologists just don't even use it. Some good friends of mine don't use their words. They have different colors and different names. And I'm not so sure I'm a big fan of that, because consistency is important to me. If one guy says one thing and some guy says something else, and who knows who you believe? I think we should be messaging the same thing, but I think we have to work together to fix that. And we need to bring in some of the SPC guys and have a long talk. And really, it's Rich Thompson, John Hart. These are my heroes. They got nothing to do with this. It's up there at NOAA headquarters where this kind of stuff is made. But the 5 levels don't bother me. And I mostly use numbers now. That's what I use. 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5. I'm kind of getting away from even using those words because it's just not working.
Thank you, James. We appreciate your time tonight. Go follow James on social media. I'm sure you probably already are if you're watching our show. And just great to get around and hang out with James. And I promise you, we'll have him back. We've got a whole list of questions we didn't even get to tonight. So stick around. We'll make sure that James repays us another visit here real soon. So for the rest of everyone here on the panel, we hope you enjoyed the show. And we will see you back here next Wednesday night for another episode of the Carolina Weather Group.